Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram language design review, part of our incremental language design, language development series. We have a variety of topics here, starting off with things about trees. Okay, so I see. Wait a minute. There's a couple of different issues here. So the thing that's driving me crazy about trees is that I'm trying to use them as representation without named entries, if you understand what I'm saying.
That's the next item on the agenda after this.
Okay. Could I just, to scratch that itch, could we just look at that first? Because it was driving me just absolutely crazy. And then I'll be paying more attention to what you've got up here. I think it's also relevant actually to this. Unless there's a huge reason not to do that. I mean,
we have Billy and Jeremy here from design, but I'm sure they'll have some input on this as well.
I think they will. Yes, I think they will. Okay, so the issue is, how do I get this? I don't want the frigging small circles there. Or if I do, I want to show them in a different way, or I want to align them to just a single thing. And okay, so let's just run this. And okay, so current method of doing it is something absolutely horrifically horrendous. I mean, to me,
right, currently TreeElement label and TreeElement style take a position.
Right. Well, they could take a symbolic thing. I mean, they okay. Look, the way this works for graphs is, worst case, you're saying vertex style arrow, and then you've got a list of elements. Okay, so wait a minute. So what do you say?
The thing that corresponds to a vertex in a graph is a position for trees, and that's what we followed.
Okay, so here, I don't even know what that is. Tree position of tree blank 0 - 2. What the heck is that?
That's the position of every inner node.
Why is that an inner node? Because it isn't -1.
Yes, an inner node is 0 to -1.
From 0, yeah, it's from 0 to -1, so it's not the leaf nodes.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty horrifying. Okay, so so this is that. Now I want to restyle the A's as well. Okay, let me tell you an example of something I want to do.
Yeah, everything we're discussing for labels should also apply for style. I agree.
Right, but what I'm saying is, here's what I want to do. I've got big trees, okay? And I won't want any of this kind of detailed stuff. I just want to color the A's blue and the B's red, for example. And I want those to be nodes. Somebody's making a bunch of background noise. Could you please put yourself on mute? Okay, so did you get what I'm saying? So how would I do that here? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and we have a few options.
Okay, fine. Let's look at them. Okay, but I mean, that objective is, I want to be able to get rid of, I want to be able to style everything here. I mean, edge style and vertex style should presumably work.
Tree versions of them, but yes. We're not literally using vertex style from graph. We're using TreeElement style, TreeElement label.
Yeah, I know, but I wonder whether we should allow one to use vertex style as well as a low-level version. You see what I'm saying? As just to say, I don't want any of this TreeElement. I just want to.
You would have to somehow implicitly have these. You'd have to have implicit vertex names,
which we do have when we convert these to graphs, right?
Sure.
If I convert this to a graph, if I say tree graph of this.
So you're proposing that if you specified a vertex style, then that would apply to that would be as if you said TreeElement style.
Not sure that I'm right about this. I'm not sure I'm right. By the way, there's a bunch of weird background noise here. I don't know what.
It's just my heater kicking
on. Seems unconvincing. Anyway, okay. look, I want to say this tree functionality is so close to being super useful. It just isn't quite there yet. So let me give you an example of a place where in let me see. Where is it? I need to find the combinator. Have you seen these? The WFR functions for combinator rendering.
Yes.
Okay, so that's an example wherever it is. I mean, those things, so where are they? Like, is this relevant? I don't even know what this is. That's this. Okay, that's not relevant. Although it's sort of interesting, this way of presenting something, which is after all a tree, is sort of interesting. This is, and it relates to the things we had earlier on in this agenda, which we haven't yet got.
And it's straightforward to make a plot like that with our current functionality.
Okay. So where is the thing? Where is the combinator expression graph? Is that the thing? Yeah, it's these kinds of things for much bigger.
Right. So the first thing I want to point out here is that these combinators, you're not using the default expression tree. You're using atoms, which is a structure that just doesn't put anything in the inner nodes to begin with. And then it's not an issue of specifying labels.
Okay, well, so you're telling me that if I do this and I just take this out of this, so if I say tree expression tree of this, comma, atoms.
Yes.
Okay, but now I want to make the okay, now help me to do the actual thing I want. Okay, so first of all, I want a different aspect ratio. I just want to see whether it works. Okay, so aspect ratio 1. Okay, dandy. I'm happy. Okay, now I want to color these things. Okay, so I want to color, let's say I want to color the S's blue and the K's, I don't know, red and blue or something. How do I do that?
So you need to do tree position.
Nope, you lost the game. You lost the game there. I mean, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Well, so that's the current thing, and then we have the 3 proposals below.
Okay, fine. So right now what I will be doing, okay, so here, the reason that's nothing is what is that actual tree element? If I do an input form of this,
it's null.
Okay, so if I replace it with null, then that's the thing that is rendered like this.
Mm-hmm.
So up here, if I were to simply replace, if I were to say expression tree of this / dot small circle arrow null.
I guess that's because tree is atomic.
Hackalorius doesn't work.
Can you do the replacement inside the expression?
I'm going to. That's the Hacker Maximus or something. Wow.
So this is what we were suggesting about doing a tree map of null function.
Which is by far the simplest method currently.
Where am I saving this? Should I save it under trees, or is that going to confuse other things? I'm going to save this under trees.
Yeah, we can.
We really should have this. We really should break when we know we're going to save these things, we should probably break these agendas into multiple pieces so that we can save them in the right places. Okay, in any case, back to this. So, okay, so you've got a proposal here for what to do.
So can you evaluate the tree map before, the current tree map? So you see that? The previous line. So that line is quite simple.
Well, in some generalized sense of simplicity. I agree that that line isn't terrible, but that line is basically doing the same hacky thing of replacing
But it's replacing in the tree, not in the expression. Which
I know that, but what I really want to do is I want to replace. I mean, what I want to do here is to say, like in this thing here, I want to replace, and this is just bonkers to have to do it this way. S with red, K with blue.
No, what you really want is to be able to directly specify this in TreeElement style somehow.
Probably, yeah. Okay, all right. Let's take a look here. So you're saying, okay, TreeElement label, tree level based. Don't we have a TreeLeaves function?
Yes.
We do, don't we? So we've already crossed the bridge of using the leaves word.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in a sense, the most obvious, leaves and non. Okay, so what are the criteria by which I want to do things with things? I want to say, leaves versus non-leaves. That's going to be one criterion. The other thing is content-based. Leaves versus non-leaves, or possibly level, but I think it's mostly going to be leaves. Leaves versus non-leaves, and the other one is content-based styling. Right? Those are the two cases in my view. Do you agree?
Yep.
Okay, so let's try and address those two things. Oh, no.
You've asked for TreeElement label function.
We want that, but not doing. I mean, this is just hacking. I don't think that's the right way to do it. What the hell is this?
No, that is just suggesting that we add atomic arguments as a structure, and it just gives you that tree. And that's just an implementation of it.
Okay, but what's the right name for this? Because atomic arguments is something I would never understand.
Well, we have arguments, and we have atoms, which is the atoms of the full tree, and we want
but
atoms not drilling into heads.
What is arguments?
That's arguments.
Why is that the right name for arguments? I mean, why is arguments the right name for this?
The data of the nodes are the arguments of expressions.
I see. So every node is an argument.
Mm-hmm. Except the root node, which is just the whole expression.
Why isn't this called sub-expressions?
Sub-expressions. It's everything.
I see. So sub-expressions really drills down and shows me all the subparts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so now what you're saying is you want arguments. Okay, so atoms.
So atoms is to sub-expressions as atomic arguments would be to arguments. Atoms is just sub-expressions where you only care about the atoms. Everything else is null.
Right. Basically, the difference is that there are no heads. In the arguments case, there are no heads, right?
Right. You don't.
That's the only difference between arguments and sub-expressions.
Yes, you don't include the heads as subtrees.
Do we have a heads option in ExpressionTree?
Yes.
So does it switch between those two?
Heads is like tree form.
No, but wait a minute. I mean a heads arrow, true or false.
No, that's just the
Maybe
structure.
We should.
I don't.
Maybe we should.
That's just the structure that you're specifying.
No, I understand that, but maybe this will be a clearer way to do it. Because I've seen this a bunch of times and I've never understood it. Do we have good examples on the page?
Yes.
I think this is a place where we should use. Oh, there we go. Okay.
And this is going to get extended with like XML and like, I just don't think heads is appropriate for this.
No, but I'm saying that's a way that you could go from arguments and you could decide that arguments is heads false, sub-expressions is arguments with heads true.
So what Ian is saying is that we have plans for many different second arguments for which heads true will not make much sense.
Oh, I understand that. All right, but maybe what we want.
Like,
I think this is very confusing. I mean, I'm sure I invented these terms, but I don't really believe in them at this point. I don't think these are the right names because I'm having a really hard time understanding. Okay, so heads means what?
how do you, yeah, so that's my question is how do you distinguish between heads and arguments?
Well, what does heads do? I don't even understand what heads, why is there a G there? This says F of AB. Where did a G come from?
The root of the tree is the head of the expression. That is what tree form does. And that is it's pretty much the default expression tree. The default expression tree is head trees. So tree form handles this one way, level specs handle it another way.
Okay, let me zoom out for a second here. So there are a couple of different issues. There's what? Wait a minute. Okay, so the one issue is a node a trivial node or a named node, so to speak? Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Another issue is, okay, so atoms and sub-expressions have the same nodes, but they're named differently. Right? Heads and arguments have the same
that
node.
entire top row have the same shape, but just have different payloads, just like the bottom row.
Okay, how would you characterize the difference in shapes? There's basically whether they include the heads.
The top row is heads is somehow, I think,
heads true.
Heads goes to false, and the bottom row is heads goes to true. But
okay, so let's talk about XML for a second.
Heads goes to true could also be arguably the difference between head trees and heads. So I just think it's not very clear what the heads option
means. I understand that. What we have right now is completely unclear. So, you know, anything we got to think about. So usually heads to true means go into the head, take account of the head, as opposed to ignore the head. Right? And that's sort of the difference between these two rows. The first one pays attention to the head. It examines the head, so to speak, and this one does not examine the head.
You have it backwards.
I have it backwards. You're correct. Right. So this one examines the head, and that one does not.
And by examine, it means there is a subtree that corresponds to the head.
Exactly.
Right. Whereas in the other one, there is no subtree corresponding to the head. Okay,
so let's just imagine that we did that. That we said that heads goes to true or false determines whether it goes in, whether it makes a subtree for the head, which is the analog of saying, you know, of map, you know, G onto F of AB. If I'm not mistaken, heads goes to true there would do this, right? It's the same type of thing. Make sense? So now I'm really believing in this because I cannot remember any of these.
Okay, so if you did sub expressions and you said heads goes to false, you would get what we're calling arguments, right? I understand that conversion.
Yes,
I have no idea what heads is supposed to do in the other three cases.
Okay, well, let's look at it. Let's look at it. I mean, what we've got is we've also got the question of whether,
because so I would just say a meta point, the functions that take the option heads goes to true are precisely the functions that treat expressions the way that sub expressions and arguments do. This is why this is
I understand. I understand.
Treated as trees differently in different functions.
I'm sorry. You're saying that is okay. Look, the difference between these different things is what the payloads are, right? So first question is, question 1, what nodes exist? Mm-hmm. Question 2, what is the payload of each node?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm claiming question 1 is completely determined right now by heads goes to true or false.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's talk about payloads. Okay. Okay, so let's understand what the possibilities are. The payloads could be, okay, first question is, are the intermediate payloads blanked out effectively? Is it leaves only? Okay, so one payload is only the leaves are filled in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's useful in all of these cases. I mean, we only provide that for atoms, but what we're asking for
is so that's atoms, and that's what I have is atomic arguments here.
Right,
like
fine.
The goal
fine. But so one thing is only the leaves are filled in. Okay, that's case 1. Case 2
I'm just pointing out this is the case that solves your problem.
No, I realize that. I realize that. So the next case is that it's accumulative. That there are really 3 cases here. It's you know, the node is quotes what's new at that node, I believe. Another is the node is everything below that node. Is that right? And it could be everything below that node. I mean, I don't understand why there isn't a version with heads goes to true that isn't head trees.
That's sub expressions.
No, because it's got this actual tree here. See, sub expressions could have a subtree as the name, as the payload of that element there. It doesn't.
I see. Well, so the reason that head trees is the way it is because it and atoms both have minimal redundancy.
Great, but what I'm saying is,
I'm just saying,
you're not giving the
you could have a version of sub expressions that also has trees.
Exactly. So we've got orthogonal issues here. Mm-hmm. We've got only the leaves are filled in. We've got the node is everything below that node, which is this case or this case. No. Which cases is the node? This is only the node is filled in, right?
This expression and everything below it is arguments and sub expressions. Those 2 cases.
Okay, and the next question is the node given as an expression or a subtree? Expression, is the node payload an ordinary expression or another or a tree?
Mm-hmm.
Or itself a tree? Okay, so what we need here, in my opinion, is several options.
So I think what's new at that node is the head.
What's that?
Where you have in quotes what's new at that node, I think we just mean the head.
Is that what we mean? Because not for the leaf nodes.
Okay, yeah. For inner nodes, it's the head.
Okay, i.e. for inner nodes, the head.
So the cases are, we only care about the leaves, or the inner nodes could be the head or the entire expression.
Okay, hold on. Let me
And
write that
then
down again.
the-
Let me write that
yeah,
down again,
okay.
okay? Case 1,
Only leaves.
only the leaves. And if it's the leaves, they too, okay, so another issue is, okay, here's another issue I've run into. I don't want to go all the way down. I want an excluded expressions thing for ExpressionTree. Like, for example, I have X blanks, and I want those to be treated as atoms.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is like excluded patterns or something. Excluded, what are we calling that? Excluded, what are we calling that? It's used in Simplify and many other things. Excluded something or other. What is it? Is that what I want? What do I want here? I've got the wrong name. Okay, another thing we want is exclude. This is actually an important thing. We want to interpreting sub-expressions as specified. Oh, okay, there. Okay, so we want to say what should be treated as atomic, e.g., you know, X blank, etc. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
I also think we probably should allow verbatim or something to specify that something is atomic, so that you can spray that into the tree to specify that it should be atomic. Did you get what I'm saying?
I get the idea. Verbatim gives me pause, but
I'm not sure that's the right thing either.
About that.
Okay, so case 1. Let's go through this again, please.
Okay,
Case
so case 1, only the leaves are labeled.
Only the leaves have a non-null payload.
Yes.
There's not a question of labeling because it's actually what the. I mean, is it ever a question of labeling?
No,
or is it?
It's just a matter of payload.
Okay. Don't we also want the possibility of ExpressionTree having the full payload, but having the labeling set so you don't see the payload?
Absolutely. Like Treeform does that. Like Treeform shows you.
Okay, but wait. So then there's another subcase, which is the payload manipulation actually done to payloads or only to their formatting? Right? You see what I'm saying?
In my opinion,
well, they have to determine the payload. We're constructing a tree. We have to decide what the payload is.
No, I understand that.
One way or the other. And then
we could have a payload.
It could be aspects that involve the formatting, like tooltips.
Yes, I understand that. But I mean, right. What I'm saying is we know we want this, right? Okay, yeah, only to the formatting, i.e., e.g., there is nothing displayed. There is only a tooltip, etc.
Yep.
I do want to say, I do want to make a meta comment here. I mean, I've been using trees, okay? And we are so close to having something super convenient and useful, but we just have a few rough edges. So let's get those nailed, squashed out. Okay, so only the leaves can have a non-null payload.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, case 2. What's case 2?
Case 2 is when you do want labeled inner nodes, and then it becomes a question of then it's what nodes exist and what is the payload, like your 2 questions above.
Well, okay, but
case 2.
Okay, but wait a second. We know what nodes exist. We've determined that above here.
Okay,
so now we're only talking about payloads. So the payloads, only the leaves have a non-null payload.
So case 2 would be we want the heads of the expressions.
Okay, so intermediate nodes are shown as heads.
Mm-hmm.
And the case 3 is intermediate expressions are shown as sub-expressions, right?
The intermediate nodes are the full sub-expressions, yeah.
Intermediate nodes are full sub-expressions. Okay, and there's a fourth case. The fourth case is intermediate nodes.
To trees.
What's that?
Convert the sub-expressions to trees.
Intermediate nodes are sub-expressions as trees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, good. Now, we might also want the leaves to have a null payload and the inner nodes to have non-null payloads. Or we might want, in general, or another subcase here is, subcase, we want inner nodes labeled by a pattern or something, by a function relative to their content. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's
as opposed to their head specifically.
What's that?
As opposed to their head.
Exactly. We're taking either the full, so that's the intermediate between case 2 and case 3, is we apply a function to determine what to show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then, look, to me, I mean, I'm just going to make it up for right now, okay? Let's say TreeLeaves display function or something. And what are we calling it? Non-leaves display function. And that would determine, so TreeLeaves, I'm making this up for right now, but I mean, this would say, I want, if the TreeLeaves display function is none, let's say, then don't display the leaves. Or if it's, with some function, func, it will do something to leaves, like it might turn S to blue and whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, so I think there should be separate style function, label function.
I agree.
Vertex and shape function.
Yes, I agree.
Function none. There's just no vertex there.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think we're going to need a bunch of options here, and I think I'm sorry, but I think there's a better way to do it. I think it's unusable right now. So let's figure out. So first thing is heads goes to true or false. Now I want to just have a little look forward to XML trees for 1 second here.
Yeah, open the source ref page for ExpressionTree.
Where am I going here? And then I want to get to, yeah, okay, let's see. Okay. Where do I go?
So that's a list of some of the things we plan on extending this with.
Okay, but now roughly what would an XML tree look like?
I think the payloads are either the tag or something that contains the tag and the attributes.
Okay, here's the thing that's holding me up, right? So, and by the way, association is an interesting one. I am unconvinced by this because I think XML is going to want to be imported. Import XML as a tree, right? Rather than you are given an expression. And yes, we have expressions now involving XML elements, but I don't think we like those very much. I think we're going to want direct to tree importing.
I think we will like XML element when it's easier to work with them because of the tree functionality. So I don't think we should get rid of
okay, but okay, fair enough. But okay, then we've got things like, so this is again a very orthogonal kind of issue. What we've got here, like text element. Yes, there's a bunch of nested text elements, but all of these issues that we're talking about here probably show up again. Like for text element, the leaves are different from the interior nodes, blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
right?
but the point is that in these cases, there are heads that we will never want to show, like for example, rule in association, right? And so there are some sort of automatic decisions in these cases.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying there can't be a second argument. I'm just saying I think we need options that could be potentially bank switched by a second argument.
Right. Yeah, they're like, yes, we need to decide priorities.
Right, but I think I think this stuff would always be the higher. Okay, so heads is one thing, right? Then we need the thing that what gets what gets treated as atomic. How do we just what is I thought it was excluded forms. Am I misremembering?
No, there is excluded forms.
Yeah, excluded forms is what Simplify has.
I think excluded forms is the right thing here. And then it's, excluded forms goes to blank pattern, or for example, and that would mean don't dig inside those. Okay, am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay.
The general case of these would be something like a function that takes the expression and returns what we consider to be the new payload and the new collection of children.
Right, but that's like a tree operation. I mean, you might as well just munge the tree at that point. It's no longer a display operation. You're actually changing the tree, I claim. Whereas you don't want to change the tree in a case like this. I mean,
excluded forms is absolutely going to change the tree. It says don't build a tree for this expression. It just
right. Okay, you're right. You're right. I see. So what Jose is suggesting is it's essentially a tree map. I see. What Jose is suggesting is tree map maps onto a bona fide card carrying tree. But what Jose is suggesting is, given an expression, you want to do the analog of tree map onto the expression. Is that right?
Right. So if we have rule in an association, rule of key goes to value, how do we express that as a new level of tree?
Okay, but I think what you're saying is you want an expression map tree or something, or a map tree. You want a way of algorithmically generating a tree from an expression, which I claim is more than this function should be signing up to do.
So that function is nest tree. We have it, and we were planning on having expression tree in addition to all of these have the option to do the same thing that nest tree does.
Okay, fine. Well, it needs a name.
The idea is more natural. Like nest tree sounds like you're nesting. Like expression tree, the idea was that's the general purpose function for converting an expression of any kind into a tree.
Okay.
Of any kind.
Okay, well, I don't completely understand this yet, but that's the thing. Okay, so then there's the then there's this stuff. Okay, so this is okay. So if we just had TreeLeaves style, tree non-leaves style, TreeLeaves label. Is it styles or label? It's vertex labels, right? Yes, it's vertex labels.
I think it would have to be S because we're saying leaves. Although like TreeElement style and all of those options were singular.
No, but this is okay. TreeLeaves style could be just a style for the TreeLeaves.
TreeLeaves style is like a nicer way of inputting TreeElement style for all of the leaves.
TreeElement style would be okay. So the analog TreeElement style will be for all elements, and TreeLeaf style.
No, TreeElement style is for this particular element, but you can also specify a list of rules for subtrees.
Okay, I understand. So this is a bank. This one has
perhaps
arrow,
this could be extended to handle the leaves case.
But that's this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you give this. So we could potentially do it's a little bit hacky because we'd have to say this thing leaves goes to whatever. You know what I think we should do if we did that? We should do an association because that way it's not ambiguous.
I think it should be tree level of string leaves, like just support leaves in level specs.
Okay, but so what would we do? We would say tree element style tree level leaves arrow whatever. Is that what you're saying? Okay, all right. So if that's the case,
like if we just use the string leaves, that might be a problem.
No, I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem. Yeah. But then what I would do is we got to have a TreeLeaves style that is a shorter way to do the same thing. And the TreeLeaves style, this only takes it by position, right? TreeElement style only takes it by position.
Currently, so this would be an extension to also support this tree level.
Ethan is commenting on our live stream about, wouldn't it be nicer to have labeling and styling like in the old graph plot? The problem is the name of a tree element is not obvious. Unlike a graph where the name of the node is the main story, the names of nodes here are a mess. Only their positions are unique, and the positions are also a mess. And plot themes for trees are being asked for here, and I agree. But okay, so let's. So by the way, presumably we also. What is the analog of vertex size?
I think we'll have a tree element size.
Ugh. Really? What are we going to do when we have DAGs? Are we going to have everything a DAG of everything?
I mean, DAGs are graphs, so maybe DAG can reuse vertex size, but the trees are not graphs.
Fine. Because their labeling of their nodes is different.
That's the only reason we really need this different thing, because ours you specify a particular node and then you specify with positions.
All right, okay. So then what we've got here, we've got the separate issue of whether the things are shown as trees. So that's a question of, we've got the sub-expression.
Can I add a case 5?
Yes.
Whether the expression should be held. Because currently we have another 5 structures, held heads, held arguments, etc., that wrap things in hold form.
Oh boy. Okay, so what this is, either the sub-expressioning or the holding, is really a function to be applied, which is more or less what Jose was saying. It's a function to be applied to the sub-expression before it is placed on the tree. Right?
Yep. Whereas heads versus true or false is determining what the children are. Whether you include the arguments or all sub-expressions.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, right. But so what we've got is tree element function, more or less, is a thing to apply, a function to apply to every element. Well, it's basically to determine the payload, to determine what will be used as the payload. So that actually includes many things. So it's the.
So yeah, we're not planning that for an option. That's just going to be that's a proper argument. Like you specify a structure by giving a pair of a function to give the payload and a function to give the children. And that's a totally general case.
Well, you're saying ExpressionTree, you're saying expression, and then you're saying this is the, payload of node, and then you're saying this is children of node.
Yep, and those are both functions that just take an expression. The first one returns any expression. The second one returns a list.
Yeah, I understand, but what we need is the payload of node Why do we need this? I mean, that's the heads. That's a generalization of the heads thing, right?
Right. Heads is the way that for expression trees, they're the two different variants of what you think of as the children of expressions.
You know, I don't get this. I don't get it. I don't get it. I think there's a display function.
Saying there's all kinds of trees. You can represent them symbolically any way you want, but in order to work with them, you have to be able to do tree data and you have to be able to do tree children.
So yeah, I get it. But I think you're look, what I'm saying is that every tree thing should have some kind of tree element display function or something. Okay, which is the thing to be applied to the content of that node, to the payload of that node, to say how to display the payload of that node. And if we had that, we would solve tons of these problems.
Yeah, so I would say tree element label function, but yeah.
Okay, fine. So tree element label function, and then, well, I think we want then tree element style function and so on. Now, if that label function gets two arguments, argument one is the content, and argument two is the some kind of location, then it might at least have a fighting chance, if it wanted to, of doing something that varied with height in the tree. Now, what that doesn't give us is the leaf non-leaf distinction. And I would argue that what we should do for that is to say that tree element label function could say leaves arrow func, non-leaves arrow func. So that you could just say, you know, non-leaves arrow none, leaves arrow whatever you want it to do.
Shouldn't the syntax just be the same as what we said above for tree element style?
No, that's a really ugly syntax. That's going to be a really incomprehensible syntax. It's going to be hard to document if people are not going to understand it. What is tree level arrow non-leaves? It isn't a tree level, is it?
So Ian,
yeah, non-leaves would be 0 to -2.
So can we pass the height as third argument? So it would be payload, comma, position, comma, height.
We could pass all kinds of stuff as the third argument. We'd have to think about what would be most useful.
Yeah, but that will be a way to at least get this. And then, okay, listen, we got to go to the other parts of this meeting. So let's bring this back. Okay, we've made a lot of progress here, but let's bring this back. And I think with this kind of tree element label function, yeah, we're going to need a style function. I guess we're going to need a style function as well, right?
I think it's going to be confusing if the function versions work differently than the non-function versions.
Well, then maybe we change them both.
Yep.
I don't think that the look, listen, we get the best of both worlds. If what we do is to have these things have the possibility of being an association and not have the naked, you know, all goes to whatever. I mean, well, I guess we could have a list. Yeah, if we have a list here or an association where the elements are this type of thing, leaves goes to this, we could have the specific tree element, you know, 1, 2, you know, 1, 3, 1, 2 goes to whatever. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only difference is these are functions. Well, but it's okay. I mean, one case is it's the naked thing and the other case is a function. This requires a bit of thought.
Yeah,
we're making progress, but we haven't solved it.
I like all the cases that we've broken down, and we'll organize this. And
okay, and I think you should think ahead a little bit to what you think is going to happen with things like XML and text element and so on, just to see whether we can bring that into the same framework.
Yeah, we are planning.
Okay, all right, let's go back here. Finally, to what we actually were supposed to be discussing. Tree outline. So tree outline is a function. Is that correct?
Perhaps you should start by calling that tree something and do TreeOutline so that you see how it works right now.
So it's a bunch of nested opens.
Right. So now this relates also to expression browsing. I mean, this is a bigger topic, right? Because what we expect is that we're going to have expression browsing, expression elision. This is a long-running project. I mean, we talked about this for at least 15 years. Okay, let me give the example. So I've got a long list, and right now, if I say range of, range of 10,000 or something, oh, for goodness sake, range of 100,000. Well, okay, no, range of 10,000 short. Right, I'll see something like this. And what we've long imagined is that you could click this and see more. Am I making sense?
Right.
And the other thing we've long talked about, I mean, this particular thing here is a bit like a notebook, except it's not a notebook. And this type of structure, I mean, like, for example, in find equational proof, we have notebooks that you can produce there that essentially represent structures that are like tree structures or expression structures for that matter. Am I making sense?
Right. Yeah, and anything that is a tree could be placed here.
So you're saying TreeOutline could operate on ordinary expressions as well as trees, or it could be TreeOutline.
No, for example, like I gave an example in my tech conference talk of converting a notebook into a tree and then displaying an outline of it. Like you can
so
convert
then
anything into a tree and then make an outline.
How do you convert a notebook to a tree?
You write a function to give you what you consider to be the data, and you write a function to be what you consider to be the children.
Buzz.
We could add a notebook structure to ExpressionTree.
Right. That's what
it should be a second argument of ExpressionTree.
But that was what I thought Jose's point was you can convert anything that is a tree into an outline.
Exactly. You convert.
Yeah, but it's got to be converted to a tree first, which is probably okay because there are many options. I mean, it reminds me.
In order to produce an outline, you'll have to somehow specify what you consider to be the tree structure.
Let me make a comment. Okay, notebook import I have found very useful. Have you guys used notebook import?
No,
not me.
So notebook import just it says what features of a notebook to bring in. Like all the subsections, for example. See what I'm saying? Like if I do that in here and I say, okay, now I say notebook import of, and then I say something like, isn't that useful?
Yep.
And if I say, I mean, I don't use it as often, but it has a way of making subsections as well. I mean, sub pieces to this. And so in a sense, that type of thing, import, okay, to my mind, there are lots of things like JSON, like whatever else, where there's essentially import to a tree. It's an external thing and you're saying import it to a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Including perhaps notebook import, I don't know. But okay, so the case you're describing here is it is represented as a tree. Now I want to be jumping branch to branch on it, so to speak, exploring it, which you're distinguishing from this project, which is the expression browsing project, which by the way should be on the global project list. If it is not, it should be there. So could somebody make sure it is? Avery, maybe you could do that.
Yes, I can do that.
And okay, but you believe this is a different project from this project. Is that right?
Yeah, this is specifically for trees. Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right. So now the question we're asking is, given that it's a tree, how do we show it as like this? Okay. All right. I'm finally in sync with what's going on. Okay. So is this the graphic design proposal?
Yeah, and UX, yeah.
Okay. And so the UX here, for some reason, why does this remind me so much? I mean, isn't this like okay, question. Is there a way of pulling my file system into a tree?
It's documented on NestTree and Tree.
How to do it?
Yep. Using file names and...
Is it a mess?
Nope.
So if I look on Tree, and where do I go?
Applications.
Okay, but that's not, well, whatever.
Right there.
Where? Okay, fine, but that's not really end user friendly. I think we need some kind of tree import or something. Actually, what it really is, okay, we say things like import string, which imports from a string. It's a little bit of the wrong way around, but I mean, we could call it, if we called it, I see, import byte array imports a byte array. But what we want is something that is essentially import tree. Either that or elements for these importing things, but import tree, I mean, or we actually want to call it file tree. You know what I'm saying? And have this be something you can just get, right? Same options as file name scan, file system scan. Actually, what it should be called is file system tree. That's the right name for it. And we should have that be a, I'm going to put that up at the top here, file system. That will be a nice function because we got file system map, and file system tree could be the same thing as file system map, but with the default that it's just the names of the files. Probably very much the same kind of thing, except that it would probably elide its arguments in a different way. You know what I'm saying? So it would say root.
But to be clear, this would be a thing that returns a tree, not a symbolic representation of a file system.
It would be what do you mean? It would be, yes,
it would return a tree. It wouldn't have head file system tree.
That is correct. It would return a tree, and it would be the tree of files. I mean, that seems pretty useful to me. But now, given that idea, every kind of file browser is fair game. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I have a random, if I'm, like this is a file browser, right? This thing here is a type of browser with these kind of, folder rings, right? Or I have this.
Are those openers? I don't use Mac.
Yeah, those are openers. But then this is another form here, you see, which goes across like that.
Like our original documentation.
Yes, that's right.
Lots of things are trees.
What is that? I've never used that. Wow, I've never used that. I don't even know what it is. Some kind of carousel thing. Huh. Okay.
Would it make sense to have something like tree form? I mean, that's just a symbolic form, but doesn't actually modify the structure of the data.
We do.
Yeah. Okay.
We have that for.
It's an old function before.
Would it look like this? Could it look like Noah's? I mean, to have functional XML or something that.
Well, right. I agree. I think that tree form. I agree with you that as a display form that would be very useful. Right now, I mean, we do have that as a display form right now, but it is, it's an impoverished creature. It's very old. and it really needs to be updated, right? That needs to be updated to be modern. I
Well,
suspect
we're
that
going to update it once we are completely satisfied with Tree.
Okay, okay,
And
fine.
it's just going to match Tree.
But then that's the answer to Jeremy's point. That basically, I agree with Jeremy that it would be very nice to be able to say / tree form for something. Although, as we've seen from the earlier discussion, how you turn something into a tree is not always self-evident. Okay, but so the issue here is, the thing I'm pushing back on is, what about all the other browser modalities here? You know, you're describing a particular one. This looks very much like Windows here. Making sense?
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what's an example of?
My feeling would be these other modalities should probably be different names. Like, this is an outline. I don't know that side-by-side thing is really an outline.
Well, look, maybe it isn't, but you know, a notebook has outlining, and it doesn't look like this.
Right.
A notebook looks more like this, if anything. I mean, the fact that this has the same backbone as the tree is interesting, right? It's got the same branches, they're just configured differently, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like there is a copy of the tree in here, correct?
Yeah.
You mean this
And
is
essentially
actually,
what? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that this is actually a layout of the tree.
It is, right? It's not an outline of the tree. This is the tree, where that node name is, instead of being drawn in the node, it is drawn here. I mean, what other things do we have? Like a dendrogram or something has multiple ways, which, by the way, I hope interoperates with trees. Does it?
No.
So it should.
Yep.
As should cluster tree and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but in any case, this thing here is merely, well, I think all of the browser forms would be, in a sense, merely, let's see. I see. It's an outline because things can be closed up and not displayed. That's why it isn't purely a rearrangement of the tree.
Yeah.
I mean, this is clearly a useful thing to have. I'm just wondering whether it's the only.
I mean, a technical thing is currently it's returning something with head opener view. Maybe this should still be something with head tree, but I think that's independent of like what the UX.
Yeah, right. But I mean, so the possibility would be that this is in fact simply
and there's
an
other
option.
aspects of it that we should get to.
What's that?
Like there's issues with elision and things like
that. Okay, but hold on. So one possibility is that this is an option to tree that determines its display. But I just want to make a practical point. We should probably break off a trees meeting independent of the ILD meeting, because this is clearly taking over the ILD meeting. It's like one of those invasive species of trees or something. That's cool. That's an interesting idea. I like that idea. That's a cool idea. Is it implementable easily? Who knows? But I think that's a very cool idea.
So as you go further through, there are sort of comparisons with data sets and how that's formatted. And this is sort of the beginning of that. In the sense that you can focus in on a part of the tree in the same way that you can focus in on a part of the data set.
I see. I'm still not. I mean, with data set, I found okay. So data set that's a good unification with data set formatting. I mean,
did the example, is that in the agenda somewhere of showing a data set as a tree?
Yeah, scroll down. I think it's literally the next bit. I might have to open something. Let's keep scrolling. Elision, there you go. So there is the data sets for the consolidated planets, and then there is an outline of that that we made.
The point is, data set uses rectangularity to make a more compact display.
Whereas a tree is considered to be more sparse. A tree, in other words, the difference between a general expression and an array is a rectangularized general expression where all the, whatever. And so data set is assuming a certain degree of rectangularity in its formatting. Makes sense to me. I mean, I just want to point out, though, that in a side-by-side browser view, you would get more, this would be more useful there. I mean, that will be a nice version of a data set as well, the side-by-side browser view, in effect. I am not a huge fan, I must admit, this thing here. I mean, I understand the breadcrumbs, but I'm not a huge fan. I don't know how we make it better. How do other people feel about this?
I like the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. I mean, I find them usable. I just find them a little bit confusing when I'm down. I have to say, if I saw something that was more like a data set analog, I mean, when I use the file system browser and it has those multiple parallel panels, I find that quite useful. You know what I'm talking about?
Agreed. Even that in conjunction with breadcrumbs.
Actually, you know what I miss here? If I hit 27 total there, yeah, this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong. This should open this up. Like the first form of the file browser opens that up in line. See what I'm saying? So in other words, instead of seeing 2 things here, I see 27 things here.
Yeah, can you right click like Uranus and hide it?
Hide row.
Right, so data set does this. In tree, we're really interested in really hiding it all, like collapse it.
I know that, but I'm making a different point. I'm saying when I hit 27 total, what I want to see is in place that opens. See what I'm saying? That in place, this makes a great big thing down here, rather than that it goes to the breadcrumb.
Well, both are useful. You need some way of easily accessing both, I think. And it's, I mean, the breadcrumb trail could be improved such that there is some kind of slot machine thing up there. I'm not really sure, but
well, I think that this could be improved to have 2 different options. One is drill down to this sub piece, and the other is open in place. And I leave it to UX and design to come up with icons that make it obvious which is going to happen. That's what's confusing to me. I knew there was something that had confused me. It's that I would expect it to open in place because that says something total. And what I would expect to see, that's what's confusing to me. When I see a greater than sign, what I expect it to do, I guess, if I saw a double Guillaume, I might expect it to go somewhere else. But with a single greater than sign, I kind of expect it to open in place. Jeremy, do you have any comments on that?
I was on mute. I think a plus sign if you're going to open in place is what I'd expect.
Fair enough.
That's
okay.
like a slide view on iOS where you would, so it's not the worst icon for what it's doing now. I don't think it's the best default action though. I think I'd prefer to do it inline too, by default.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that it might get very large and you would need scrolling. And I'm not sure you can put a scroller there in the middle.
We should look at that. Okay. I mean, okay.
You don't have to show all of them either, though. You could show.
Yeah, you could just go to
number.
more of them.
Yeah.
You just go to more. And maybe that's a way that one could do this while, more here or something like that somehow. Noah, this is your kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking away. I'm not entirely sure what it should do, but yeah.
Right. Okay, but let's come back to this. So, is the question here opening, expanding elided branches? Oh boy. Okay, so this is something where the root is not what you see. You are in a sub-branch. You are living in a sub-branch here. Actually,
Yes.
I want to comment on something here again. If I go down and I drill into this, there's something about this. Maybe I want an outer border around it or something that doesn't make it clear that I'm underground. I understand that the breadcrumbs should make it clear that I'm underground, but I feel like it needs more than that. For example, if this border had something on it that indicated that this was a sub piece of something else, it was floating inside something else, that would help me.
What if there was a carrot from the top of that pointed to the? I don't know. I suppose because the breadcrumb could be longer. No, never mind. That doesn't work. But like a carrot. Well, yeah, like where your mouse
down
was,
carrot.
Yeah. No, like a speech bubble carrot kind of.
At the top,
thing.
Pointing to the.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So pointing upwards to yeah.
Oh, this thing here. I see that this thing here had a little notch on it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I agree, that would be good, but it could have a notch over on this side too, that indicates. I mean, that would have to interfere. That would interfere with that thing, but I think that would be more useful. It's like this is a puzzle piece that goes into something else.
Well, actually, the good thing with the elided tree outline is that it kind of has that. Like if you scroll down, there's
I know there's this thing here.
Yes, but there's a bit coming out of it, sort of pointing to the left.
Yeah, and also I like that the minus turns into a back arrow.
Which minus?
On node 1.1.
Mm-hmm.
You see the opener has become a back button.
Yes, that is nice. That's quite nice. This is clever. I wouldn't say children. I would just say 1 to 6 of 40 or something. I think by the time you're talking about children, it's you've gone very, I don't know what. It's very technical by the time because people just think of it's a tree, but it's a tree that means something that I'm just browsing because I'm browsing some XML thing, and they don't think of it so much in that way. Options for TreeOutline. Oh gosh. Okay.
Well, there was one point in there that is very relevant to data sets, which if you just scroll back down, okay, so the actual image there, there's a little grabber on the bottom left.
This image here, yeah, okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
yeah.
That would be wonderful to change the window size.
Yeah, so it's essentially just changing max items or. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's a great idea for data set. Super useful.
So the question would be, would elision be controlled by the max items option like it is currently in dataset, or
yes,
kind of dynamically by the image size that you drag it to?
Well, I mean, if you change the image size, it would effectively change the max items, just as many other things you can change about the appearance of the data set change.
Well, the size of the items can also change. It's not necessarily.
I understand that. Oh, you mean, well, but I guess
the size of the items affects max items.
The size of the items affects what's displayed here, but it does not affect max items. If there was a giant item, it would still count as one item. I see, but this is then a switcher for max items. Your point is this is not accurately reflecting.
It's more naturally a control for image size than for max items.
Yeah, well, fair enough. You're right. You're right.
Well, I mean, it would just mean that as you dragged it, it would sort of jump in discrete chunks.
I'm not sure that would be. I think that might be horrifying. No, it wouldn't just jump because no. Think about it. If the items are of different sizes at different places down the item list, you could get completely messed up.
Like CSG region tree.
Well, you could if you move this down, right? You think you're expanding it to, and then that changes max items. Changing max items as you then scroll through the item list might suddenly have a giant elephant there, and and then it would take up the whole. It would have the elephant plus all its friendly, birds or whatever flying around it. You see what I'm saying? And yet the height would be wrong because there's an elephant there. Anyway, that's a minor point.
But I suppose that's why we were asking: should it mirror data set in the sense that it should be controlled by max items, or should we use image size? And it sounds like image size would be more sensible in that case.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that dataset. I'm not even sure it works correctly in dataset to use max items because it could have the same issue with a tall element, tall row.
It does. It does.
Ugh. Well, then that's probably a bug.
Okay.
There's clearly more to look at here, but I am supposed to do a different live stream, so I think I really have to go. Outline view. So Tyros on our live stream is commenting that in the registry editor, there is a dual panel for children and leaf differentiation. Yes, I've seen that actually. Somebody looked at the registry editor because I agree it has some of the same. Any property list editor is going to have the same kinds of issues. Makes me wonder whether we could elide an association this way nicely, because it's kind of what you have. Well, no, that's basically eliding a data set or an expression that is a nested association collection. All right, we have to wrap up now. To be continued another time.
So should we bring this back another time?
Yes, but why don't we get a custom trees meeting? Because it's going to take, this is going to completely dominate the ILD meeting.
Okay.
This is another solid hour of work. And I mean, it's very useful and there's a lot of very good things here, but it's just going to take time. All right, see you all soon.